Before names carved stone, before gods ruled the sky, there was only silence, not the absence of sound, but a breath held by the universe itself. What if I told you that everything, thunder, desire, betrayal, and even beauty was born from that stillness? Tonight, we descend into that silence, not to sleep, but to remember. Before names carved stone, before gods ruled the sky, there was only silence, not the absence of sound, but a breath held by the universe itself. What if I told you that everything, thunder, desire, betrayal, and even beauty was born from that stillness? Tonight, we descend into that silence, not to sleep, but to remember. Close your eyes. Let the room fade. You're not in a bed anymore, floating in the emptiness before time, where nothing has yet dared to exist. No stars, no sky, no sea, only a thick, humming stillness. This is not emptiness, it's potential. It's chaos. Not the chaos of noise or madness. No, this chaos is the original hush, the kind that waits. And from that waiting came the first pulse. Earth, Gaia, wide and steady, patient as bedrock, endless as grief. She did not appear, she was. Soon followed Tartarus, the unspeaking depths that coiled beneath her like an ancient root. And then came Eros, not a cherub with golden wings, but raw force, the pull that makes things yearn to be near one another. It was creation's first fever. Next arrived Nyx, the night herself, and Erebus, the shadow that wraps around silence. From them would eventually bloom day and light. But light was still far off. Gaia alone but fast gave birth to Uranus. The sky stretched above her, endless and cold, and with sky embracing earth, the world as we know it took its first breath. Together, they made children, 12 beings, colossal and strange. The Titans, Oceanus, who circled the land like a serpent of salt water, Hyperion, who carried the sun on his back, Thamus, law itself, Mnemosyne, memory with no beginning. They were more than beings, they were ideas made flesh. But Uranus looked upon them and felt fear. Perhaps he found their power unnatural, or perhaps he simply hated the echo of his own vastness, reflected in their forms. So he did what gods often do when faced with what they've made. Tried to bury them. He shoved the Titans back into Gaia's belly, into her body, into the deep. She groaned under the weight of her own imprisoned children, and from that pain, she forged vengeance, a sickle, carved from mountain bone, and soaked in the silence of stone. She crawled into the darkness and whispered to her sons. Most stayed still frightened, except one, Cronus, the youngest, the most cunning. He did not burn with rage. He waited with it. When Uranus lowered himself once more across Gaia's form, Cronus struck. One slash, sharp and unspeakable, carved a scream across the cosmos. Sky was separated from earth. Blood fell onto the soil like red rain, and from it grew wild things. The Furies, the Giants, and the Malaya spirits of Ostries in the sea. The severed flesh gave rise to something even more, a Stangian Aphrodite, goddess of love, emerging fully formed from foam, beauty born from brutality. Cronus now stood as the king of everything. He set his siblings free. He ruled what poets would later call the golden age of time, when humans had yet to forget wonder, and gods had yet to grow cruel. But peace, as ever, came with a whisper of warning. Uranus, as the sky bled out, cursed his son. Essay fell by my child's hand. He said, "So too shall you." Cronus heard, and Cronus believed, and Cronus decided to cheat fate the only way he knew how, by devouring his children, one by one. As his wife Rhea gave birth, he opened his mouth like a furnace and swallowed them. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, each taken not in malice, but in terror. He feared their rise more than he loved their cries. Rhea, desperate in mourning, finally tricked him. With the sixth child, she wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and handed it to her husband. He swallowed it without question. The real child Zeus was hidden far away, suckled by a divine goat in the shadowed cave of a forgotten island. He grew not just in strength, but in certainty. One day, he would face the father who had tried to end him before his name was known, and that day would change the world. Beneath the dripping ceiling of ancient stone, Zeus grew taller than the trees that guarded him, raised in the arms of quiet nymphs, and nourished by the wild milk of a celestial goat. His childhood was stitched with secrets. No lullabies, no crowns, just stories murmured by cave walls of brothers he'd never met, and a father who devoured futures out of fear. Each drop of water echoing in that cave sounded like a ticking clock, and when he was ready, muscle hardened, voice quiet like a storm. Before it breaks, he left. Not with a parade, not with just a cloak over his shoulders, and a silence deeper than his father's tyranny. Disguised as a servant, Zeus slipped into Cronus' court, like a shadow learning to walk. His presence was unnoticed, but his purpose, sharp as the blade Gaia once forged. Gaia had not forgotten. The earth, old as all things, whispered to her grandson. She gave him something ancient, something bitter as ash, and old as betrayal. A draft made of roots, rock, and volcanic memory. Zeus stirred it into his father's wine. It did not take long. Cronus sipped, frowned, gagged, and then, with a sound that cracked the sky like an omen, he doubled over. Out of him came gods, not infants, but full-grown deities, their eyes burning with stolen years. Hestia.com, an enduring Demeter, bearer of growth. Hera, already fierce Hades, watchful and quiet. Poseidon, restless as the ocean he would one day command. And the stone, the trick, the lie that had bought him all time. They stood no longer memories, but gods with names, rage, and purpose. And though no war had yet been declared, everyone in that room understood. There would be no peace. The sky had begun to tremble. Part 3. The war that split the world. There were no treaties, no ambassador, only the unspoken knowledge that the world had too many rulers now and only one throne. Cronus fled to Mount Arthurus, dragging with him old loyalties and ancient titans. Oceanus, wise and wide as the horizon. Kus, who once measured the stars. Crius, Iapetus, Hyperion all. Gods of a darker geometry, not kings of thunder or beauty, but architects of reality's bones. They were old, but not weak. Meanwhile, atop the fresh heights of Mount Olympus, Zeus gathered his freed siblings. They were few, just 6, but forged in a furnace of loss. And they were not alone. Earth itself had grown weary of the war drum. Gaia, eternal and aching, watched her lands crack and bleed beneath the marching feet of gods. Rivers ran wrong. Seasons forgot their names. Even mortals those. Fragile flames newly kindled felt the wind turn against them. Gaia whispered again. This time in Zeus's dreams, you will not win with force alone, she told him. You must go deeper, into the place your father feared most. So Zeus went. He descended past roots and stone, past memory and myth, down into Tartarus, a pit beneath all things, where even nightmares slept with one eye open. There, bound in chains older than sorrow, were beings never meant to be remembered. The heck, 3 brothers with 50 heads and 100 arms each. They did not speak. They breathed in earthquakes. Beside them, locked away unjustly, were the Cyclopista, one-eyed smiths of legend, whose forges had once stitched flame to iron and dream to weapon. Zeus broke their bonds. The chains hissed and snapped like dying serpents. The freed giants rose, stretching limbs like mountains. Waking up, the Cyclopes, so covered and still burning with genius, offered thanks in the only way they knew, a gift of war. For Zeus, the thunderbolt, a weapon not made, but extracted from the marrow of storms. For Poseidon, the trident, forged from the silence beneath the sea. And for Hades, a helm woven from pure shadow, to make him invisible to all things, or unseen. The Olympians did not thank them with words. Gods rarely do. Instead, they prepared. The war that followed wasn't a battle. It was an unraveling, a slow, grinding split between old power and new defiance. 10 years, that's how long the sky remained bruised with smoke. 10 years of lightning cracking mountains open, of oceans flooding continents in blind rage, of shadows walking unseen through titan camps whispering fear into sleeping minds. The titans were relentless. Cronus, sickle in hand, fought with the precision of inevitability. He had been king of everything. He had tasted eternity. He would not give it up easily. But the Olympians had something older than age. They had spite. And spite, sharpened by injustice and sealed by prophecy, is a weapon few can match. The tide turned the moment Zeus hurled his thunderbolt not into the air but into the bones of the world. The thunderbolt didn't just strike it, remember. It carried inside it the scream of a son betrayed, the fury of siblings swallowed whole, the breath of Gaia herself begging for peace. When Zeus cast it, it didn't hit a mountain. It created one. Rocks shattered. The air curled in on itself. The titans staggered not from the blast, but from the realization the age of their certainty was ending. And still, Cronus stood, blood in his teeth, a sickle of stone in his grip. He faced his children with the eyes of a god who would rule the cosmos, and never once asked permission. He didn't plead. He didn't curse. He fought. Poseidon rose beside his brother, trident and clutched like a storm's backbone. He summoned waves not from the sea, but from the memory of it, flooding the valleys of Artheres with the wrath of a tide that had waited 1,000 years to be released. In Hades, he was never seen, slipping through camps unseen, through Titan ranks like a rumor whispered too late. He pulled thoughts apart like thread. Commanders lost their minds mid-centuries, fell asleep. Mid-breath, dreams turned sour. Zeus, Poseidon, hot as sky. Sea shadow, sended upon Cronus, like a prophecy come alive. And when the sickle finally dropped from Cronus' hand, it struck stone with a sound like the end of an age. He fell, not like a king, but like a monument collapsing under the weight of its own legacy. Zeus did not speak. He didn't need to. The silence roared. Part 5. The chains of yesterday. The battle didn't end when Cronus dropped. The other titans, those who had raised mountains with their hands, who had crafted rivers with a glance, looked up, saw the sky crack, and knew their time was over. Some tried to vanish into wind and forest. They became echoes, spirits, half-remembered gods whose names now belong only to stones and tree roots. Others surrendered, folding knees, made of fire and bone to the children of the world they once shaped. Most were not forgiven. Zeus ordered chains to be forged not of iron, but of concept. Time, regret, silence. The bound titans were hurled into Tartarus, each locked behind a gate guarded by the Hecatonchires, who no longer needed to sleep. Atlas tallest, proudest, loudest was not cast into the pit. His punishment was tailored. He was marched to the edge of the world, where the horizon forgets its name, and there, without word or blessing, the sky was dropped into his arms. He did not cry out. He simply bent his knees, and he has not straightened them since. Part 6. The division of the infinite. When the ash settled and the last boulder stopped rolling, the world lay in ruin. Burnt forests, splintered earth, rivers that no longer knew which way to flow. Zeus and his brothers stood at the center of it all, not as victors, but as inheritors of a problem too large for any god. The world needed order. And so, for the first time in all existence, the three gods sat together not to fight, but to divide. They didn't argue. They drew lots. To Zeus fell the sky, the wind, the storms, the high blue cradle of thunder and stars. His voice would be law above the clouds. To Poseidon went the sea, the deep, churning black, the coral castles and abyssal plains. Every current would answer his moods. And to Hades, the underworld, the land beneath all lands, where memory dies and souls walk backward through eternity. He accepted it without protest, not because he wanted it, but because someone had to. The earth itself, the middle realm, rich with life and rot, was left not out of mercy, but because no god could bear the weight of it. Gaia still lived, and her silence was warning enough. Part 7. Olympus and the aftershock from the wreckage. A new world rose. Mount Olympus, high above mortal breath, became the throne of the new order. There, among swirling clouds and ambrosial winds, the gods built halls of gold and stormlight. They feasted. They loved and lied and cursed and blessed. But the scars of war lingered. Zeus, though crowned, often wandered the edges of storms, as if searching for the end of the thunder. Poseidon brooded in the ocean's trenches, restless, aching. Hades withdrew completely, speaking only to shadows. They were rulers, but also children of a broken sky, and not all wounds were meant to heal. Peace returned to the world, but it was uneasy. The kind of peace that walks on tiptoes, careful not to wake something older than time. And somewhere, far below Olympus, the gates of Tartarus groaned, because stories do not end when the war is won. They begin. Not the kind of fire that warms hands or cooks meat. Prometheus stole the fire of thinking, the spark that lives behind the eyes, the inner blaze that says no to what is and dreams of what could be. He climbed to Olympus not as guest, but as thief. He took flame from the forge of Hephaestus, cupping it in a hollow stalk of fennel, and under the cover of dusk, he brought it to the trembling hands of man. He taught them how to burn wood, shape tools, carve stone, smelt iron, how to cook grain into bread, how to name stars and fear shadows. Humanity lit its first fire and it would never sleep the same again. Part 10. The price of mercy. Zeus saw the glow on the horizon. He knew rage did not come slowly. It arrived like a lightning bolt that had been waiting for an excuse. To Zeus, fire was power, sacred, dangerous, and Prometheus had given it to creatures who aged, wept, died, and dared to question. That could not stand. So Zeus punished man subtly at first. Droughts, crops that failed, plagues that whispered through the wind. But that wasn't enough. He needed to punish Prometheus. Not with death, that would have been a kindness. No, Zeus chose forever. Prometheus was bound to a cliff at the edge of the world, where the winds forgot language and the sky forgot mercy. Iron chains, forged by Hephaestus himself, wrapped around his limbs, like serpents made of guilt. And every day, as the sun rose, an eagle descended. It tore into his flesh, ripped out his liver, and by nightfall, it would grow back. Each dawn began the agony anew, not because Prometheus screamed, but because he didn't. Part 11. The gift that broke the world. Still, Zeus was not finished. Man had fire. That couldn't be undone. But trust could be poisoned. And so, he called for a gift, one wrapped in sweetness and ruin. Hephaestus sculpted her from the finest clay, shaping her with more care than any statue ever carved. The gods each added something: beauty from Aphrodite, music from Apollo, cunning from Hermes, curiosity from Hera. Even Zeus gave her something: charm without warning. She was named Pandora. She was presented to man not as punishment, but as wonder. a gift in human shape, and in her hands a jar. "Do not open it," they said. So, of course she did, and from it spilled everything mankind had never known before: sorrow, rage, lies, death, war, loss, pride, time. The world turned gray. The gods watched. Only one thing remained in the jar: hope. She closed the lid before it escaped. And that, some say, is why mankind continues. Not because we were made strong, not because we were made wise, but because something quiet and stubborn was trapped in the same jar as ruin, and we hold on to it. The world was young, but already weary. Humanity, forged by mercy and burned by curiosity, had spread like wildfire across Gaia's skin. But with fire came smoke. With invention came cruelty. Cities rose. Yes, but so did lies, greed, and pride, too large for mortal bones to carry. The gods watched from Olympus, and among them Zeus scowled. He had gifted the earth to mortals as a proving ground. But what he saw now was not struggle, it was mockery. Altars defiled, oaths broken, kings declaring themselves divine while their subjects starved. So Zeus, king of sky and thunder, lifted his hand, and the sky bent to his will. Part 13. The flood that unwrote the world. The winds began as whispers. The rivers, swollen from secrets, began to stir. Then came the rain. Not drops, not showers. A collapse. The heavens did not fall, they opened. Oceans were poured across mountaintops. Valleys were buried. Temples crumbled. Forests dissolved. The sea swallowed coastlines, and then cities, and then everything in between. The world drowned, not in hours but in memory. Those who ran were taken. Those who climbed were dragged down. Even those who prayed found their voices muffled by water. The gods did not answer. The gods were busy cleansing. But not all were lost. Part 14. The two who remained far above the wreckage, atop a trembling mountain, stood a boat not of luxury, but of desperation. Inside it, two figures, mortal, shivering, alone, and Pyrrha, daughter of Epimetheus, and Pandora born from the line of regret and curiosity itself. They had been warned. Prometheus, ever the forward thinker, had whispered to his son in dreams, "The sky will fall. Build high, float, or be forgotten." And so they had built a vessel stitched from tree bark and bone, lashed with ropes spun from nymph hair and prayer. No rudder, no oars, just faith. When the waters came, they held each other as cities were erased and the horizon melted into ocean. They drifted to specks on a world washed clean. For 9 days and nights, the boat wandered over a planet that no longer had edges. It rained salt and silence. They did not speak. What was there to say when all stories had been drowned? But on the 10th dawn, the sky cracked not with lightning, but with light. The flood receded. Peaks emerged like ancient teeth. Birds screamed. The wind tasted like memory, and the boat scraped gently onto the shoulder of Mount Parnassus. The world had ended, but they had not. Part 15. The birth of a new race. They stepped onto land like newborns, unsteady and stunned. The sun felt wrong. The soil beneath their feet was soggy with death and rebirth. No voices, no footsteps, just wind. Deucalion wept not from grief, but gratefulness. Pyrrha did not cry. She watched the horizon, wondering what would come next. They offered thanks to Themis, the tightness of divine law, whose forgotten shrines still clung to the mountainside. And there, between cracks in the stone, they begged, "How do we begin again?" Themis did not appear, but the wind answered with a riddle. "Cover your heads. Throw the bones of your mother behind you." They paused. Strange advice, but prophecy often arrives wrapped in mystery. And then they understood Gaia was their mother. Her bones, the stones, scattered across the ruined ground. So they covered their faces with their cloaks, turned away from each other, and began to cast stones over their shoulders. Each stone that struck the dirt shivered. From the ones Deucalion threw Rosemen, upright and strong. From Pyrrhus came women, graceful and fierce, not born of womb or firebud, of grief, obedience, and stone. And so humanity was born again, not from innocence, not from clay, but from memory. The path to Medusa was not drawn on any map. It twisted through myth, bent across oceans, and vanished into deserts where the wind forgot its name. Even the gods could not simply point to a dwelling, only guide with whispers. So they sent him aid. Hermes, god of roads and words and sly, placed in Perseus' hand a blade curved and silver bright, so fine it could cut a breath in half. Athena, cold-eyed and sharper still, offered a bronze shield, polished to mirror perfection. "Don't look at her," she warned. "Look at her reflection." And then came the nymphs of the north wind ancient, and barefoot, faces like snow that never melts. They gave him 3 final gifts: a satchel to hold death, a helmet to vanish, and the winged sandals of Hermes, stitched with wind itself. Then they turned away, because no one watches the boy walk toward a monster. Part 22. The Gorgons hollow the land. Near Medusa's lair was wrong. Even birds did not fly here. Even insects dared not breathe. Trees stood frozen mid-wilt. Statues littered the ground, men and beasts, caught in their last terror, forever. But they were not carved. They had looked. Medusa lived in the ruins of a temple older than grief. The pillars had long crumbled, and snakes slithered through cracks that wept with salt. Perseus hovered just above the earth, sandals whispering against dead air. He dared not speak. The bag was empty. The blade was quiet. In his hand, the shield glinted his only eye. He entered the chamber backward. Part 23. A face no one was meant to see. She was not roaring. She was weeping, curled in shadow, coiled in grief. Medusa did not lunge. Her snakes hissed low, not in threat but in warning. She had once been worshipped. Now she was legend, a riddle with teeth, a curse with a heartbeat. And she was tired. Perseus did not see her directly, only her shimmer in the shield's reflection. A pale shade, hair alive, eyes closed. He crept closer, not with anger, but with dread, because even now, even at the end, he wondered, what if I don't? What if I leave? But destiny is a hand that grips the wrist, not the shoulder. And the blade was already rising, with one swift stroke clean. Perfect. Silent he ended her. There was no scream, only a wind that shuddered through the stones, as if the earth itself exhaled. Her head fell, snakes still writhing, eyes closed forever. And from her neck the winged horse, born not of blood, but of sorrow and sky. A final gift from a woman turned to myth. Part 24. The return with a head full of silence. Perseus placed the head in the satchel. The sack twitched once, then went still. He did not speak on the journey home. Even with Pegasus at his side, even with the wind beneath his feet, he remained quiet, because he had not slain a monster. He had fulfilled a sentence. When he returned to Seriphos, Polydex laughed until the sack opened. One glance, 1 second, and the king became stone, still smug, still seated, but silent. Forever. Perseus did not gloat. He placed the head in Athena's hands, and she, knowing its power, fixed it to her shield not as a weapon, but as a warning of what happens when gods curse the innocent, of what happens when mortals are made to carry out divine mistakes. Before heroes wielded swords, before cities carved their names in marble, there was Orpheus, a man with no armor, no throne, just a lyre, and a voice that could untie the knots inside the heart. When he played, rivers forgot to flow, trees leaned forward, greedy for melody. Even the stones softened at the edges. But Orpheus did not play for fame. He played for her. A girl with laughter in her footsteps and a soul stitched to his like breath to a flame. They married under an open sky, with nothing but wildflowers for guests. And for a time short, but infinite, they were happy. Until the world, as it often does, remembered its cruelty. Part 26. A bite, a scream, a silence. It happened too fast. Eurydice stepped into a meadow, chasing a breeze or perhaps a butterfly. A snake silent, coiled in sunlight, struck her ankle. There was no battle, no drama, just a breath that didn't return. She dieth, with his name still wet on her lips. Orpheus found her body cooling in the grass, her eyes wide with questions he could never answer. The earth took her, but Orpheus did not weep like other men. He stood, and then he sang. Part 27. Descent into shadow. He walked to the edge of the world and did not stop. Not when the stars vanished behind him. Not when the air grew thin and sour. Not when the gates of the underworld loomed all as despair and locked with silence. He sang, and the gates opened. Charon, the ferryman of the Styx, did not ask for coin. He only bowed his head and ferried Orpheus across the black water. His are trembling with the melody still echoing in the boat. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, did not snarl. He lay down and wept. Even Hades, the god who had never known mercy, paused Even Persephone, queen of dust and regret, wiped away a tear that turned a pomegranate seed. Orpheus sang, not a song of gods or glory, a song of mornings once shared, of her hand brushing his, of the way Eurydice laughed like she had eternity in her lungs. He asked for one thing: let her walk behind me, let her return to the light. Welcome, friends, to our channel, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. And today, my friends, we're going to tell you about the origin story of the Greek pantheon. That's right, kids. Before there were toys and cereal, there was the Bible. Now, we know what you're thinking. Wait, did we just say Greek pantheon? You mean the Marvel version? Right? Wrong. This is the real deal. The Greeks, with their toga thing and their columns and stuff. We'll try to keep it simple for you. So let's start off with a bang. Let's talk about the big guy upstairs, Papa Zeus. Back in the day, before he was throwing lightning bolts around, Zeus was just another hot young god trying to make his way in the universe. See, back in those days, the universe was like a bad Airbnb, overcrowded, poorly ventilated, and with questionable stains on the couch. To put things in perspective, the universe back then looked like the plot of a bad space romance novel. Uranus, the sky titan, was married to Gaia, the earth goddess. And you know what happens when you mix up two titans at a party? Yeah, you get babies. Lots of M12 to be exact. And these weren't your average babies. Oh, these were full-grown adult gods, fully capable of wreaking havoc on the universe. You can probably guess some of their names: Kronos, Rhea, Teres, Okeanos, Mnemosyne. If that list sounded like Greek to you, well, you're not alone. All these gods were part of the first generation of Olympian gods, the ones who came before Zeus and his crew. Now, the first 12 Olympians ruled over everything from the sky to the sea to the very essence of time. But you know what they say? Second time's the charm. Except in this case, it's more like second time's the chaos. See, when Zeus and his 5 siblings took over, they decided to shake things up. First up, they chucked out their dad, Uranus, because he was kind of well, let's just say he wasn't good with changes, and then they ditched their mom, Gaia, because she was way too invested in the drama. So now the new generation was in charge. And let's just say they had some ideas about how to run the universe. First things first, they divided the universe into 3 parts, each ruled by one of the 3 brothers. Sky went to Zeus, sea to Poseidon, and Hades got the underworld. But don't think for a second that this division was all sunshine and rainbows. We're talking about gods here. People, there were power struggles, betrayals, and enough backstabbing to make Game of Thrones look like a tea party. Take the whole Poseidon and Hades situation. For example, remember how Hades got stuck with the underworld? Well, Poseidon wasn't exactly thrilled about that. I mean, who wants to hang out with ghosts all day? So he tried to weasel his way out of it. At first, he was all, "Hey, Hades, how about you take the earth instead?" But Hades wasn't having it. He wanted the underworld, so they flipped a coin. And let's just say Poseidon wasn't expecting Hades to actually win. So then he tried Plan B. threatening to flood the underworld. But guess what? Hades had that covered too. He unleashed hellhounds, Cerberus, Fluffy, all the monsters to guard the gates of the underworld. Poseidon was not happy, but he knew he couldn't fight his brother on this one. So he just sulked and swam away to his coral kingdom at the bottom of the sea. But let's not forget about Zeus. He was busy making the world a little less gloomy. See, when he took over the sky, he decided to chuck out his dad's old system for predicting the future. Uranus, the old man upstairs, had set things up so that mortals could only find out their future by consulting one of the three. These three old ladies spun the thread of fate for every mortal on Earth. But Zeus wasn't feeling it. He wanted mortals to have a fighting chance, maybe a little more free will. So he unleashed the Titan Prometheus to bring fire to humanity. Now, Prometheus wasn't just any old Titan. He was Zeus' favorite. Maybe it was because he was always stirring up trouble for the other Titans. Or maybe it was because he was the one who tricked the gods during the great sacrifice. But Zeus trusted him with one of the most valuable gifts in the universe, fire. With fire, mortals could cook their food, build their homes, and stay warm during the winter. But Zeus had one condition. Prometheus had to give the gift of fire to humanity without letting the other gods know. But you know, Prometheus, always the rebel, thought he could do better. He crafted a grand chariot pulled by fiery bulls and asked the sun goddess Helios to drive it across the sky, announcing the dawn of a new era for mankind. But you guessed it, the other gods weren't exactly thrilled about this new development. Hera, Zeus's wife, was especially peeved. She made a big stink about it, and Zeus, well, he was a little embarrassed. He hadn't meant for Prometheus to make such a spectacle of it. So to save face, he decided to punish humanity by sending Pandora and her box of evils upon the world. But let's be honest, who really got screwed here? Mankind, Prometheus, or Zeus's ego? But, you know, as much as they fought and bickered, the Olympians were a pretty tight-knit bunch. They threw epic parties on Mount Olympus, complete with ambrosia, nectar, and enough drama to fuel an entire season of reality TV. Just imagine the gossip. When Hades brought Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, to be his bride, Zeus decided to throw a welcome to hell party. All the gods showed up, even the grumpy ones like Ares and Athena. And what did Hades do? He served nectar from a golden goblet that just happened to be it allowed him to see everything that happened in the underworld. Talk about a buzzkill. But you know what? Despite all the backstabbing, cheating, and general chaos, the Olympians brought some much-needed stability to the universe. They established a new order, a new way of doing things. And hey, they weren't perfect, but they were certainly entertaining. Just ask any mortal who has ever wondered why they re-stuck with bad hair on a Monday morning. Yeah, thanks, Zeus. Let's move on to the lesser-known members of the Olympic pantheon. First up, we've got the big brain herself, Athena. She popped out of Zeus's head, fully grown and ready to strategize. Unlike her father, she played by the rules, valuing wisdom, courage, and justice above all else. Then there's Apollo, the god of music, archery, and light. With his lyre and bow and arrow, He could charm a snake and slay a dragon, all while looking like a total snack. His twin sister, Artemis, was the goddess of the hunt and the moon. She was all about living life on her own terms, roaming the forest with her entourage of gal pals, aka her hunters. Next, we've got Ares, the god of war, who was about as popular at the Olympian dinner table as a vegan at a barbecue. Everyone tolerated him, but no one really liked him. He was the embodiment of violence and bloodshed, and the Olympians knew to stay away from him as much as possible. Speaking of staying away, we've got Hephaestus, the lame god of the forge. Sure, he wasn't the most good-looking god, but he made up for it with his amazing craftsmanship. I mean, he built Olympus after all, and he could whip up anything from golden chariots to badass prosthetic legs. Then there's Hermes, the messenger of the gods. He was basically the OG Uber driver, delivering messages, souls, and babies with ease. He was also a total trickster, always getting into mischief and coming up with clever solutions to problems. And let's not forget Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. She was the ultimate cougar, always prowling around for the hottest gods and mortals to seduce. She was also the reason why Mount Olympus had a strict no PDA policy. And finally, we've got Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry. He was the life of the party, bringing merriment and mayhem wherever he went. He was also the reason why you should never trust a god who offers you a cup of wine. So there you have it, kids. The Greek pantheon in 100 seconds. I know it's not the Marvel version, but hey, the real thing is way more epic. Now go forth and spread the word. And remember, when life gives you lemons, blame Aphrodite. Welcome, mortals, to the grand masquerade ball of Olympus. Tonight we dine on ambrosia, drink nectar, and tell stories of gods. Oh, look, there's Ares, flushed and bold, leaning close to Aphrodite. They make such a beautiful couple. And over there Athena watches, with amusement a smirk playing on her lips. Let's go join them. We'll listen to a tale of love and craft, a story of how one god got his revenge on Olympus. They call it the Smith of Olympus. Far below the polished thrones of Olympus, beneath the gold-lined corridors where laughter echoed like thunder, lay a different kind of brilliance. No harp songs here, no scented breezes, only fire, smoke, and the ringing cry of iron meeting anvil. It was a kingdom without sunlight, but it burned. This was the realm of Hephaestus, the god whose hands built Olympus, and whose feet had never quite fit its marble floors. He was not born lovely, where his divine siblings radiated perfection. Hephaestus arrived into the world crooked and screaming, cast aside by the very goddess who bore him. Hera, queen of Olympus, had birthed him in vengeance stew match, Zeus's child alone. Sea foam cradled them, Thetis and Eurynome. The sea goddesses gathered his broken form and carried him to a hidden cave beneath the waves. There, he learned pain, but also creation. While the heavens forgot his name, Hephaestus made beauty from flame and hammer. He forged wonders, bracelets that sang, swords that thirsted, thrones that moved on their own. Even gold, as if it were thread. Iron danced in his hands, and in the deep chambers of his forge, he built more than tools. He built himself. Years passed before Olympus remembered the sun cast out, when Hera found herself seated upon a golden throne that would not let her arise. Divine, prank forged with precision, she realized the boy had become a god. Hephaestus returned to Olympus, not in chains, but in triumph, limping soot-streaked eyes, glowing like coals. He was no longer the broken child. He was the smith of Olympus, the fire that shaped gods. But Olympus, ever cruel beneath its glitter, welcomed him with applause and whispers. They marveled at his skill, but not his soul. They praised his art, but pitied his form. And so, in one of the most baffling ironies of myth, the gods gave him a gift wrapped in cruelty. They gave him Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, born from sea foam, shaped by desire, kissed by every golden light in the cosmos. Where he labored in shadows, she basked in radiance. She is laughter and perfume, silk and skin. Her smile could turn war to poetry. And they said be husband and wife. No one asked Aphrodite. She accepted because that is what one does in Olympus. When the decision is made, she stood beside the forged god and placed her hand in his. But her eyes did not linger there. Hephaestus, for all his brilliance, knew it. His love burned quietly. Hers, not at all. And so the union became a masquerade. She danced at feasts. He toiled in silence. She spoke of love. He shaped armor. She whispered to Eris, the god of war. Raw and beautiful and loud. And together, they played their games behind the forge god's back. But if Hephaestus was no fool, in his solitude, he built not only traps of metal but of knowledge. He watched, he measured, and one day, when the heat of betrayal glowed too bright to ignore, he acted not with rage, but with craft. He forged a net of such delicate strength that it could not be seen by mortal or god. Threads of gold, impossibly fine, woven with cunning and pain. And he laid it upon his marriage bed. Then he waited. Ares came as he always did, bold, sure, laughing. Aphrodite, ever reckless, joined him, and as they embraced, the net closed silent, inescapable. The lovers froze, limbs entangled, trapped in the most humiliating of tableaux. Hephaestus summoned the gods. One by one, they arrived. Drawn by the promise of scandal, they laughed, pointed, whispered, The net was removed. Ares vanished. Aphrodite disappeared in a shimmer of rose and fury, and Hephaestus returned to his forge. He never married again. Instead, he poured his heart into his work shaping shields for heroes, chains for titans, palaces that floated, automatons that could think. Each strike of his hammer was a heartbeat, each flame a memory.
Not all gods thundered, not all ruled with flame or fury. Some shaped the world with silence, with thought, with the patience of stone and the sharpness of a blade honed by restraint. Athena was one such god. She did not scream to be heard, she simply existed, and the world listened. Before we begin, remember the world is built by those who walk the line between chaos and control, between force and finesse, violence and patience, exactly like our sponsor Morning Brew. Their app is designed to help you catch up on daily news in less than 5 minutes. Their pieces are short, informative, and engaging, helping you feel smart about current events and ready to join any conversation. I enjoy reading their tech section because the way they break down new gadgets and trends makes me feel like I am in the know. I don't have time to read long articles or watch lengthy videos, but with Morning Brew, I feel confident that I'm staying up to date. If you want to start your mornings feeling informed and ready to take on the world, try it out for free today. She was born not in blood nor pain, but in paradox. When Zeus's head split open, not from battle but from pressure, from the unbearable weight of thought itself, she emerged, fully grown, fully armored, as a goddess of intellect, born not from womb but from mind. Steel and wisdom braided into flesh. No crying babe, no soft cradle. Her first breath was a war cry. Her first gaze saw through kings. She was not the goddess of all Warno that belonged to Ares, the tantrum in armor. Athena was the goddess of war with purpose, war with poetry. She favored the strategist over the brute, the builder over the destroyer. Her temples did not echo with screams, but with the scratch of styluses and the quiet click of looms. For Athena understood something her siblings did not. The power held in the mind was heavier and more dangerous than power held in the fist. She walked among artisans, whispering into their dreams. She stood beside mathematicians, drawing invisible lines that stitched stars together. She guided the fingers of potters, the hands of weavers, the hearts of architects. Where Ares swung a sword, Athena placed a stone. Cities rose in her name not from conquest, but from vision. But Athena was not without pride. Hers was not the bloated arrogance of Zeus, nor the vindictive heat of Hera. It was colder, cleaner, the kind of pride that grows in silence, in certainty, in knowing one's own brilliance, and expecting the world to behave accordingly. And so, when the mortals began to name her as their guide, as their protector, Athena watched with satisfaction, not surprise. One such city unnamed, unclaimed, still raw with potential, dared to call for a patron deity. 2 answered the summons. Poseidon, lord of sea and storm, came first. His trident sparked as it touched the earth. A spring erupted clear, shimmering, divine. People rushed forward only to recoil. Salt, beautiful but undrinkable. Power, but no nourishment. Then came Athena. No lightning, no spectacle. Only silence as she knelt. Her fingers brushed the dust, and from it rose an olive tree. Slender at first, then tall. Its roots coiled deep. Its leaves whispered secrets, and its fruit bitter and strong held the future. They tasted the oil, rubbed it into wounds, burned it in lamps. It fed, it healed, it endured. The people knew the city would be hers. And so Athens was born not in thunder, but in thought. Athena ruled not with a crown, but with a gaze. She watched from the corners of workshops and whispered across battlefields. Her shield the aegis bore the severed face of Medusa, not as a trophy, but as a warning. Wisdom could be terrifying too, but even gods with sharp minds can be pierced by pride. Far from the marble towers of Athens, in a dusty village where goats outnumbered prayers, lived a girl named Arachne. She was not a noble, not a priestess. She was simply gifted. Threads sang through her fingers like wind through harpstrings. She wove images so lifelike that bees tried to land upon them. She painted myths in thread, captured sunsets in silk. People came from days away to see her hands move. She, like many, touched by the divine, began to believe she was untouchable. They say, Athena taught me, she said once, needle flashing in the sun, but I taught myself. I surpassed her. The wind changed. Athena did not strike. Not yet. She came instead cloaked in the skin of an old woman. Her back bent, her voice cracked. Child, she said, do not tempt the gods. Even the clever fall. But pride has no ears. Arachne laughed. Let her come. I would challenge the goddess herself. So Athena shed her disguise, and the village fell to silence. 2 looms were set. Athena's tapestry blazed with divine majesty, her birth, her wisdom, her justice. Her threads glowed like sun-polished armor. Every stitch sang of order, of glory, of balance. It was not just art, it was judgment in silk. Arachne's tapestry was truth. She did not weave myths of reverence, but of consequence. She told the hidden stories. Zeus disguised as beasts to seduce mortals. Hera cursing the innocent. Apollo striking down lovers. Dionysus drunk on madness. Her threads bled honesty. Her loom screamed rebellion. And when the last thread was tied, Athena stared. Not a flaw, not a single misplaced knot. The tapestry was perfect, painful, a mirror held up to the gods' faces. Athena's pride burned, not from insult, from sorrow. This mortal had genius but no reverence, precision without humility, power without worship.
So Athena,
Goddess of justice, goddess of restraint, acted without either. She did not destroy the tapestry, she destroyed the weaver. With one touch, Arachne's limbs shriveled. Her body shrank, legs multiplied, fingers dissolved into twitching limbs. Her mouth vanished, but her skill remained. She became the first spider. To this day, her children spin in silence. They weave not stories, but traps. They hide, they hang, they wait. Their beauty is still in the thread, but their voices were taken. Some say Athena regretted the curse. Others believe it was mercy letting Arachne continue her art, but never her defiance. And mortals, ever learning, ever forgetting, speak of Athena with awe and caution. For the gods are not just creators, they are mirrors, and some mirrors cut. I've always believed that storytelling is a powerful tool to learn about history, culture, philosophy, and even science. In fact, it's probably the main reason why I love what I do. But there are times when you need to go beyond stories to get a deeper understanding. You need real data. Numbers, names, dates. That's where Nebula comes in. Nebula is a streaming service built by some of the best educational creators. On Nebula, you can find shows like Real Engineering, where you get to see fascinating experiments with explosives. There is also the Action Lab, where you learn about the science behind everything from car crashes to James Bond gadgets. My own show, Myths and Monsters, is also available on Nebula exclusively, where you can see mythical creatures brought to life with stunning visuals and cutting-edge technology. Now, for a limited time, you can get Nebula for just $1.99 per month. That's less than $2 for an entire year of incredible content. When you sign up with this link, you'll also get access to CuriosityStream, another amazing service filled with thousands of documentaries on every subject imaginable. CuriosityStream is where you can watch a show like Engineering the Future, which explores the latest innovations from self-destruct helmets to anti-gravity shoes. Or maybe you want to watch Ancient Worlds, where you can learn how scientists use modern tools to uncover the mysteries of the past. So for less than $2 a year, you can get access to a library of incredible shows from some of the best creators on YouTube. Sign up with our link in ULL, get the full Nebula experience for just $1.99 per year. That's less than the price of a cup of coffee each month. And if you sign up now, you can watch the brand new season of Real Engineering and the exclusive Nebula original, The Action Lab, right away.
In the cradle of a drifting island once denied sanctuary, the sun first kissed the face of a god, not with a blaze, but with golden breath warm, constant, and blinding. His name was Apollo. He was born beside his twin sister Artemis, on Delos, a speck of land not anchored to earth, and thus beyond Hera's curse. Their mother Leto labored alone, her cries echoing into the waves, as no god dared intervene. 9 days and nights she struggled, until finally, under the watching stars, she gave birth to 2 forces the world would never forget. Artemis came first school, and moonlit eyes like sharpened stone. Then came Apollo radiant, burning brilliant, beyond mortal comprehension. His first cry scattered the clouds. The island bloomed. The air shifted. It was not the wail of a newborn. It was a declaration. Apollo was the god of many things. Of light, of music, of prophecy, of healing and plague, of poetry and vengeance, of harmony and cruelty. Contradiction clung to him like perfume. His beauty was legendary, but cold. His laughter warm, but unpredictable. He could soothe with a song and destroy with a glance. It was he who first touched the lyre, strumming strings made from tortoise shell and sunbeam. The melodies he wove did not merely please the ear, they reshaped reality. Crops ripened under his music. Birds paused mid-flight to listen. Even stone wept when he played in mourning. But Apollo was more than a musician. He was the voice of fate. In the valley of Delphi, where the earth breathed through cracks and the air carried secrets, Apollo built his temple, a place where mortals could crawl to the edge of knowledge and tremble there, a place where futures leaked through the mouths of those chosen to bear the burden of knowing too much. He anointed a priestess Pythia, who sat upon a tripod inhaling vapors from beneath the earth. And through her, Apollo spoke. His words, twisted and veiled, spun fate like a spider spins silk. Beautiful, deadly, inescapable. Kings came with offerings. Warriors came with fear. Lovers came with desperation. But all left changed, because no one hears the voice of truth and remains as they were. Yet Apollo, for all his vision, could not always see the hearts of others. This is where Cassandra enters, a princess of Troy, dark-haired, sharp-tongued, brilliant. She walked through palaces like a storm trapped in silk. Where others knelt to the gods, she questioned them. Where others begged for miracles, she demanded answers. And Apollo, who heard every prayer but felt few, noticed her. He watched her speak without fear. He watched her refuse to flatter. And something strange stirred in the god who thought he had already invented beauty. He wanted her not just as a priestess but as a partner. He offered her a gift. You wish to see clearly, he asked one twilight, as she walked alone among the laurel trees. Then I will give you my sight. You will know what others cannot. You will see what is coming, every joy, every fall, every whisper of deaths before it happens. And with a touch of his fingers to her temples, she saw time split open. She saw her city burning. She saw her father weeping. She saw a wooden horse and the fall of warriors. She saw gods fighting over fate, like dogs over a carcass. She saw love that betrayed and betrayal that justified itself. She saw the end of stories before their beginnings. And then she saw him up. You see now, he said, what it means to be divine. But he asked for something in return. Not her worship, not her loyalty, her love. Cassandra, unflinching, said no. I did not ask for your power, she said, and I do not owe you my body for it. Gods, unlike mortals, do not rage loudly. When wounded, they punish with elegance. Apollo could not take back his gift. The sight had already rooted itself in her blood, but he could curse its fruit And so he whispered a sentence so cruel it disguised itself as mercy. Let them all hear your truth, but may no one ever believe you. From that moment, Cassandra walked through time cursed with clarity and no voice that could change it. She warned her father of Troy's fall. He laughed. She begged her brothers to turn back the horse. They patted her shoulder like a child. She screamed as flames danced in her visions, and the city listened only to silence. She was not mad, but madness found her anyway. Apollo, for his part, did not gloat. He watched her suffer, yes, but not with joy, with something colder, detachment. He believed she had chosen this. That pride had cost her peace. That clarity was a gift, even if it broke her. But gods are poor judges of pain they've never felt. Cassandra would later be taken by Agamemnon, chained not with iron but with prophecy. She foresaw her own death. She knew the blood waiting in the bathtub, the shadow with the knife. And when she spoke it, no one believed her. Not even him. Her final breath was not a scream. It was a whisper. I told you. And so Apollo's gift became a warning about knowledge without power, about seeing too much and changing too little. His temple at Delphi would thrive. His hymns would echo through ages. But in quiet corners of myth, the name Cassandra lingered, not as a prophetess, but as a mirror that showed the gods the ugliness of their gifts. He came late to Olympus, not born, but arrived like a fever, like a storm you didn't see forming until it was too close to outrun. He didn't claim a throne. He danced into it, barefoot, drunk, and laughing. Dionysus, god of wine, madness, ritual, and release, of theater, illusion, and the sacred undoing of the self. He was not orderly. He was not regal. He was something far older and far wilder. The moment a scream turns into a song, and no one knew quite what to do with him. He had not come from lightning or prophecy or war like the others. He came from ash, from ruin, from a mother burnt alive by the truth. Semele, mortal daughter of Thebes, once loved Zeus, not tricked, not taken loved, which is perhaps worse when gods are involved. But love makes mortals curious, and Hera, queen of Olympus, twisted that curiosity like a dagger. Ask him, she whispered in disguise. If he's truly Zeus, ask him to show you everything. Semele did, and Zeus, bound by an oath he could not break, revealed himself in full glory. She was incinerated instantly, but in that flame, in the bone-deep glow of celestial combustion, a child stirred in her womb, not yet born, but burning. Zeus plucked him from the ashes and stitched him into his own hiding, him where even Hera could not reach. From this second womb, Dionysus emerged twice-born, forged in death and godhood, screaming not in fear, but delight. No one believed he would survive or stay sane. They were only half right. Dionysus wandered first, across hills, through distant lands, wrapped in animal skins and vine. He was raised not in marble palaces, but by nymphs and satyrs. His lullabies the rustle of leaves and the low moan of wine fermenting in berry jars. And when he grew, he brought with him a contagion, not a sickness of flesh, but one of unraveling. He tore through cities not with armies, but with music, with laughter, with intoxication so thick it made walls sway. The air changed when he arrived. Order cracked, masks slipped, and the part of you that whispered in dreams the while, the repressed, the truthful rose to the surface like a tidal wave. They called it madness. He called it revelation. His followers were mostly women maenads, wrapped in ivy, their eyes too wide, their mouths red with berries or blood. They danced on mountaintops until their feet bled. They howled under full moons. They tore apart wild beasts or men with hands no longer bound by reason. Dionysus didn't teach restraint. He taught surrender to feeling, to impulse, to chaos. But he wasn't just a drunken jester. He was worshipped, feared, because where he went, boundaries collapsed. He was a god of opposites. Joy and delirium, creation and decay, love and He blurred the lines between man and beast, man and woman, God and madness. His rites were ancient, older than Olympus. They reached into the marrow of human longing and asked, what happens if you let go completely? And the answer was never the same twice. Kings tried to ban his cult. One such fool was Pentheus, a mortal prince who mocked Dionysus, called his rites obscene, his followers hysterical. So Dionysus smiled sweetly, dangerously, and invited him to watch. Pentheus, curious, dressed as a woman to spy on the maenads, to see what they did in their delirium. But Dionysus does not forgive mockery. And Pentheus was seen not as king, not as spy, but as prey. His mother, intoxicated by divine madness, tore him to pieces with her bare hands. When she woke, her son's blood on her skin. The spell broke, but the grief stayed. That was Dionysus too. He punished through ecstasy. He revealed the fragility of control. He showed mortals that they were never as civilized as they pretended to be. Yet, for all his chaos, Dionysus was not heartless. He gave release to the grieving. He comforted the broken. He taught that sorrow could ferment into joy, that madness could be sacred, and that those cast-out women rebels, dreamers, had a god of their own. He was the only Olympian who rescued his mortal mother from the underworld. Semele, long dead, was brought to Olympus by her son, now divine in full. No one else had dared such a journey, but Dionysus defied death as easily as he defied rules. They made space for him at the table. Finally, not because they loved him, because they could no longer ignore him. He came with ivy in his hair and theater on his tongue. He taught actors to wear masks and audiences to shed them. His festivals became legends, carnivals of illusion, where tragedy and comedy danced side by side, reminding all who watched that both were masks on the same face. He made the world beautiful, terrible, truthful, and then he vanished. Not forever. He always comes back, in the drumbeat that speeds up as the fire grows, in the laughter that turns into weeping without warning, in the moment when a stranger touches your shoulder and you feel like the moon has noticed you. He is the god of letting go, of what's buried, of what breaks free. Dionysus, the last Olympian, the one you can't explain, only follow or flee.